Welcome to Electorama News Weekly. I'm Rob Lanphier, founder of the Electorama Election Methods Minimalist and co-founder of electorwiki.org, among other things, and San Francisco resident for over a decade. I'm joined this week by Taylor Eigen Fisher in Los Angeles and Carlo Miranda in Houston, Texas. Today's main story is the 2026 California gubernatorial election, and specifically what the California's top two primary is about to do to a crowded field on June 2nd. Before we get into California, Taylor and Carlo, could you introduce yourselves and point listeners to your work in electoral reform? And I'm going to start with you, Taylor.
Hi, I'm Taylor Eigen Fisher. I'm a mathematician who is very interested in electoral reform. I write blog posts about generally approval voting. That's the system that I'm most familiar with. And you can find my blog at eigentaylor.github.io.
Cool. And Carlo.
All right. Hi, I'm Carlo Miranda. I am an environmental science student at Sam Houston State University. Very recently, I've gotten interested in voting reform, and I've just been mostly focused on U.S. elections, single winner elections, trying to get away from first past the post towards better systems like approval, STAR, Condorcet. You'll find me online, mostly just Carlo Estefano. Right now, I'm still trying to build up all those sites and get everything together, but that's where you'll find me. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's dive into this election. The California gubernatorial election will be held on November 3rd, 2026, to elect the governor of California, with the statewide nonpartisan top two primary elections is scheduled for June 2nd, 2026. Incumbent Governor Gavin Newsom is term limited, so cannot seek re-election for a third term. As of March 2026 certified candidate list, there are 61 candidates on the ballot. And there have already been candidates who've dropped out. This is an aside. There's been candidates who've dropped out, but there are 61 on the ballot. California is heavily Democratic. Republicans have not run a statewide race in California since 2006. However, the fragmented Democratic field in this year's top two primary could allow Republicans to advance to the general election, or for that matter, to Democrats. The California Democratic Party has urged low polling candidates to drop out to prevent this outcome. As of May 2026, polling showed that Republican Steve Hilton in the high teens, and a two-way contest between Democrats Xavier Becerra and Tom Steyer for the leading Democratic position, with Republican Chad Bianco and Democrat Katie Porter in the next tier. So that's the background. You guys have anything to add?
Yeah, so I'm a California resident, so this is very pertinent to me. And following this race has been a bit of a mess. So the risk of a Democratic lockout has been pretty interesting when I bring it up to people who are kind of unaware. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Carlo, what's the outsider's perspective on this one?
Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier that, because I'm from Texas, looking at it from the outside, it's kind of just like looking at a giant fire going on somewhere else. And I'm not within there to really, pick out the details too much, but I will say this is probably one of the most high-profile current events that we can directly relate to our concerns of vote splitting, concerns of choose one voting, and just like the unpredictability of having such a polarizing system kind of interact with a bunch of candidates, a bunch of viable candidates. And I think it provides a perfect opportunity for us to, really engage with the voters in California, and start a conversation about how we can maybe improve that.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I'm in California myself. I have not decided who I'm voting for. I'm almost certainly going to vote for one of the Democrats. but which one? I have no idea. So yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun figuring out what my strategy should be, because as we talk about a lot of times on SAS's call and on in many other places, top two definitely does not get rid of the strategy problem, and this is proof of this. But let's go on to the next part of it. California's voter-nominated parties primary system, established by Proposition 14 in 2010, differs from traditional party primaries in that it does not choose party nominees. Instead, it serves as a winnowing stage to select two finalists for the general election. All candidates appear on a single ballot, and all registered voters may vote for the candidate regardless of party affiliation. The top two vote getters advance to the November ballot, even if one candidate receives an outright majority in the primary. This structure ensures a head-to-head contest in the general election, but can introduce a coordination problem for voters and parties when the field of candidates is crowded. Thoughts?
Yeah, I believe my understanding is that the kind of intention of the system was to help independent candidates. That was my understanding. Like, one of the goals was to increase moderation, but as we can see, there's no independent that's a serious, viable candidate. The main kind of contest has been Republicans smartly going behind one or two candidates, and Democrats having a complete coordination mess. So no independence to be seen. I don't think the system has done what it was intended to do.
Yeah, and I'm pulling up my voting guides now because I think this is a good time to point this out. The Republican in this race, well, several of the leading candidates did not agree to California spending limits and therefore are not in the voter guide. And that includes billionaire Tom Steyer, and also I think even Xavier Becerra, not to mention Matt Mahan, I don't think is in. Like, this voter guide has a lot of candidates in it, including Katie Porter, but not and including Betty Yee, who already dropped out.
Oh no. Oh no.
Good stuff, right?
So yeah, so we've got a lot of I'm not sure how useful the voter guide is. I mean, what's also fascinating on the Republican side of things, like, as near as I can tell, I'm not 100% positive of this, but I do not believe Steve Hilton is in this. He is the leading Republican, but Sheriff Chad Bianco is in here, so he agreed to the limits. So I think that kind of goes to show you that, yeah, like, this is going to be like, people who believe in campaign finance reform are probably looking at which candidates are in the voter guide for that reason. And yeah. Carlo, you have something to say, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I'm curious whether the voter guide will be a testament to that. I don't know what you would call it. I guess kind of the impression that voters get about whether a candidate chooses to limit their campaign contributions. If there is kind of a huge bump for Katie Porter in that instance, I feel like there is something to build from there. And you know, whether people agree or disagree with how it works or different campaign finance regulations, you know, there is kind of that pressure there, and if it doesn't do that, then I think it's evidence probably that we need to focus on something deeper. Why do we have a system that is enabling so much money to be filtered into the race to try to, I guess, kind of pull back the vacuum of gridlock and polarization and kind of move the needle as much as possible? Yeah, I don't know. It is messy, and the 2-round system specifically, it has an interesting history, in being very useful for other countries getting towards multi-party democracies. But as we see here, wherever where you know the 2-party system is so consolidated, there's so much money involved. There's so much ballot access problems. As Taylor was mentioning, we don't have independents coming into the race. We just have like a giant mess of some Republicans trying to be really strategic and a bunch of Democrats who like they're like, okay, this is our place. We can really push some kind of competition, but first past the post doesn't allow for that. It doesn't allow for that true plurality, that true expression that we really need.
Yeah. So let me read one more excerpt from the article. So the 2026 race illustrates the lockout or shutdown risk inherent in the top 2 primaries using choose one voting. In a state where one party, the Democratic Party, holds a massive registration advantage, the vote can be split among multiple viable candidates. If the minority party, Republican Party, concentrates its votes on fewer candidates, it is mathematically possible for the 2-party minority candidates to take the top 2 spots. For example, if the Democratic vote is split 15%, 12%, 10%, and 8% among 4 candidates, total of 45, while the Republicans' vote is split 18% to 70%, total 35%, the 2 Republican candidates would advance to the November election despite the Democratic camp having 10% more total support. This scenario forces voters into a strategic coordination game where they must guess which candidate is most likely to make the top 2 rather than expressing their true preferences. So that's all I had prepared to read. What do y'all think of the lockout situation?
Yeah, so mathematically, the sort of when you have a system like this is basically single non-transferable vote. When you have 2 spots, you can support 3 viable candidates. When you have more than that, that's what causes the vote splitting, and you no longer have an equilibrium. But that requires coordination. So the optimal strategy is basically to maximize your impact is to look at 2nd and 3rd place and then just vote for whoever you prefer among those. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's also fascinating. So there's a website that is pretty popular in the electoral reform space called Independent Voter News, IVN.us. Like splashed all over their front page is a whole lot of, in fact, maybe I'll just screen share it now, because I'm looking at the homepage, and let me do share. Here we go. So there is, of course, they talk about the decision in Virginia, but they also talk a lot about California here. Is the truth about California's jungle primary? Both parties are wrong in all caps. And the California Dems push a Republican panic. Their own poll contradicts their message. What IVN seems to be doing is trying to downplay the danger to either party that there's going to be a lockout. And there's a lot of words written on the website about that. But embrace the jungle. Why the California jungle primary is actually 115 years of reform against party machines. So there you go. And you can understand why the parties might be against this, because like just looking at what is happening to the Democratic Party right now, like oh yeah, it's
intense.
Okay, now I'm spacing the name of the guy. Who was the guy who dropped out?
Oh, Swalwell.
Swalwell, thank you. Yes. Yeah. Like Eric Swalwell, he because it seemed to be he was the anointed one by the Democratic Party. And then they discovered that he doesn't like behaving well around women, I guess. So that put California in the national news. Carlo, I'm guessing you'd already heard about Swalwell.
Yeah.
It's been.
I haven't voted yet because Swalwell's campaign basically imploded over the course of a week, and we have about 3 weeks, 3 weeks left.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting to vote until I am 100% sure who the viable candidates are. And that seems to be
same here. Like I'm in San Francisco. There's usually a place right down the street for me to drop off my ballot on election day. Like that's probably when I'm going to drop off my ballot. I'm probably not going to mail it in because you never know what's going to happen. Like this race has just kind of showed that, like, yeah, because I've been hearing like the Democratic Party has been encouraging people to vote early. Like in past elections. Like I don't know if they've been doing it this election, but in past elections they've been all like vote early. I suspect probably because like they understood what the polling looked like well enough to like have some predictability about what it would mean. Whereas this election, they don't want people to vote early because I'm going to guess there's at least some people who are going to still vote for Eric Swalwell and Betty Yee, among others.
Yeah, I mean, my family, my mom, she told me, she was like, while she was filling out her ballot, she just kept saying over and over again, like, I wish we had approval voting. Because, at least in that case, you can hedge your bets, vote for a couple people, in case, poor anyone who voted for Eric Swalwell or whatever before, out or whatever. Now their vote is basically
null and void.
Yeah. And sorry, wait, Taylor, continue what you're saying. I apologize.
Oh no, that was it.
Okay, I was just while it's still fresh in my mind, that reaction I think is so indicative of something very deep and like perverse with everything that's going on right now. We shouldn't have a voting method in the the most powerful, like strongest held like geopolitical, like all the words like we are a military and like economic giant. There is no reason why we should be worrying about whether the path to our the path for rulers can be done without your consent and can be restricted without your consent, essentially. And that's what's happening right now. Saying, oh, I wish I had approval voting, I wish I had more choice there, isn't just like, I this is something small that's like a little inconvenient. No, these are going to be the people that rule over us. And if we want to really have a say, we need to have a system that doesn't completely destroy that equal power. all of our votes should have that equal power, and it doesn't with that unpredictability. Because even in a really messy race like California, you could probably have a way more equal vote if you were just allowed to do a little bit more, if you're allowed to bubble in maybe one more name. But no, we're forced with this specific restriction that causes this instability. And it makes sense why after 250 years of this, people get fatigued, people get tired of the institutions, they grow distrust. And you know, that to me is a tragedy. It's a tragedy that, you know, we make those small confessions whenever we go to vote. And you know, that's the whole reason why we're trying to build towards something like approval, like STAR, like Condorcet, and beyond, to create a better system of accountability, responsiveness, but at the end of the day, power, like equal power, really, like truly, just mathematically equal power.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, we picked the California story because both Taylor and I are here in California, and we've been seeing stories about the possibility of 2 Republicans advancing into the election. And plus lots of electoral reform advocates outside of California became interested because of the national coverage of this conundrum. The article we discussed is excerpts from is electowiki.org/wiki/2026_California_gubernatorial_election. Or just go to electowiki.org and search for 2026 California gubernatorial election. And as always, viewers and listeners are free to revise it. And let's move on to other news. So there's a whole bunch of other things that have been happening in the world of electoral reform. Taylor, I'm going to just say this right before the show. You told me about an equal vote thing, and I'm hoping you can add the link to the bottom of this list that I'm reading off. But starting off with Virginia's ranked choice voting local option bill became law on April 22nd, 2026. And I'm futzing with my quote teleprompter here. Where after the General Assembly concurred in Governor Spanberger's recommended changes during the reconvened session. So they got through the whole mess of getting the bill through, and the final acts were chaptered the same day as SB 176, Chapter 993, and HB 630, Chapter 1062, effective July 1st, 2026. So it's effective this year. That it still allows cities to do pilot projects with RCV. It's not like statewide RCV, from what I understand. And in a different, in Ohio, Senator Louis Blessing has introduced Senate Bill 395, a top 3 primary plus consensus choice as the general election bill. The general election is interesting because 3 finalists are shown in each head-to-head pairing. So voters get to vote on A versus B, A versus B, B versus C, and C versus A, and may indicate a preference for each pair. The candidate who wins both pairings wins outright. So I guess they're only putting 2 pairings. I'm not sure. Anyway, if the 3 candidates form a cycle, the bill elects the candidate whose head-to-head loss was the smallest. This arrives just after Ohio banned ranked choice voting. So they had to make it. They had to make the ballots so that they weren't ranking. The primary is an all-candidate top 3 primary using MNTV, which stands for multiple non-transferable vote, I believe, which is a multi-member version of single non-transferable vote, which is used in many countries. The sponsor's press release makes it sound like voters may choose up to 3 candidates. Well, Ed Foley describes it. Ed Foley is with Better Choices for Democracy. He describes it as a 1-vote top 3 primary. The bill text clearly says all candidates appear in the primary ballot and the top 3 vote getters advance, but the ballot mechanics are still worth a read. In other news, Brom Cohen the inventor of BitTorrent, posted approval voting is a bad idea, arguing that approval's yes or no ballot hides strategic incentives. I'm going to move this. Hides strategic incentives. And that ranked ballots, ideally with a Condorcet check and a fallback method, are a better foundation. Clay Schentrup, a co-founder of the Center for Election Science, pushed back on these comments, arguing that approval advocates are not assuming voters have binary preferences and pointing out instead to Bayesian regret and voter satisfaction efficiency, or VSE style simulations where approval performs well. Another election method, another sort of nerdy fun thing is the busiest thread on election methods mailing list in April was about the majority beat versus plurality beat Condorcet. And there's continuing back and forth on filling vacated seats under STV. And over on the voting theory forum, Smith primary to approval and consensus choice are both generating discussion. So we didn't cover any of these in the monthly newsletter, or really, we certainly didn't feature them, but are either of those interesting for either of you to talk more about? Oh, by the way, there's one other story, which is actually, can you tell me what the story, what it was, the Equal Vote Coalition? You sent the link to me just before the show.
It looks like Equal Vote is starting a petition to reform the California top 2 primary to be under approval. I just got this email today, and so I don't know the full details, but it looks like it's going to be trying to replace the top 2 with approval top 2 instead of reverting back to partisan primaries, which it looks like there might be a ballot petition to do that in the coming years, actually.
Okay. Yeah, that's super fascinating. I'm on the board, and I didn't know. I'm on the board for Equal Vote Coalition, so I wasn't aware of this until just now. So
honestly, this must have sprung up like right now, probably.
Yeah. All right. So those are the stories. We should probably hold off on talking about that one much more until we know more.
Right.
But yeah. So what do you all think of the other stories I brought up? Is there anything that you wanted to latch on to and talk about more, or ask questions of me of? Because like I know a lot about, or I know at least something about all of those other topics.
Well, okay, so I remember earlier we were talking about the consequences of the Ohio thing. It's really interesting. So they're trying to avoid the ranked choice voting ban in Ohio, but trying to do a consensus choice thing, and it's essentially blocked plurality top 3 into minimax. Is that kind of how it is, or?
Yes, I think.
Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah. So right. So as many candidates as want to can run for any office. The top, they're all printed on the ballot. The ones that qualify to get it on the ballot, at least the top 3 candidates, using block voting. So being able to, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's, I think it might actually be choose one voting.
So almost like single non-transferable.
I didn't know that much about it until today, really. I was like, what is the method they're doing, etc. It looks like it's minimax, and it looks like it is for a Condorcet general election between 3 candidates, where I think all 3 pairings are listed. I don't think it's just 2. I was relying on some auto-generated text that said it was only 2 that were listening, but I'm almost positive I'm almost positive it is possible for a voter to express a circular preference, which is
Interesting.
crazy.
So yeah, all that needs to be done to avoid the ranked choice voting ban. Interesting, because I wonder where the energy for that and like the thought and like the, I guess like that's interesting, because I know the Better Choices folks really want to push for something related to RCV, or not RCV, sorry, Condorcet.
Mhm.
It fascinates me because I know that Center of Election Science is now kind of switching over to lobbying more. And now this seems to be the case for Better Choices is also kind of trying to do a lobbying thing too, because it's going through the legislature, right?
Yes, well, and mind you, so Ned Foley is a longtime Condorcet advocate,
Okay.
who is also, I can't remember what his credentials are, but he's got serious credentials. Like, I think there's a Wikipedia article about him and everything. And he's there in Ohio. And so I think that's one of the big driving factors is they decided to like try this in a state where they actually have at least one very passionate advocate, where it hasn't been like where voting reform hasn't been tried, because Fair Vote has basically called dibs on most of the blue states, most of the reliably blue states. Fair Vote seems to have called perma dibs on, but Ohio has been drifting red. It used to be a purple state. It's pretty red these days.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if that advances or not, where it goes. Yeah, I and now that you mentioned the red state thing, I wonder if this will leave kind of a vacuum for maybe approval to fill, because there is kind of that consolidation where the Fair Vote stuff, the Democrats are a little bit in bed with ranked choice voting right now, just a little bit, even though there's been huge losses going on. I wonder if this is kind of an angle for voting enthusiast folks to be like, hey, there's a conservative option on the table, small c conservative option on the table that is viable in these different places. And I wonder if the legal language in Ohio could have allowed for something like approval. But I mean, hey, go Condorcet, right?
yeah. I mean, I on set, like the thing I frequently bring up on Sass's call, is like I'm looking back at my bulletin board. I wrote an article for the Pearl Journal way back in 1996 that was a solidly pro Condorcet article. I just looked through it. I didn't even bring up approval voting in that article. Like, I only basically brought up, the Condorcet as something better than instant runoff voting, which actually I didn't call it instant runoff voting because that term hadn't been invented yet. It was called preference voting, or
the alternative vote.
Alternative vote.
Yeah,
Was,
the alternative vote and preference rule.
Yeah, were the two names that were still being bandied about. So single transferable vote was a term that was used, STV, and a lot of the people in the Fair Vote's orbit, which at the time they were called Center for Voting and Democracy, in that orbit were more interested in proportional representation than they were in single winner reform, and I think this is still true. I think there's a lot of folks who get involved with Fair Vote who are more interested in proportional representation than they are in single winner reform. And it's hard to blame them, right? I mean, especially if you're part of any minority at all whatsoever that like doesn't feel like a candidate like you is going to get elected, like say women, right? Like there's so their message has, has long resonated very well at League of Women Voters meetings. I've witnessed it firsthand.
For sure.
Yeah, I do want to say about this Ohio thing, I find really kind of fascinating is sort of the structure of the ballot is kind of the purest sense of Condorcet, in the sense that philosophically, if you consider Condorcet to be measuring who would win every matchup, you do technically, like philosophically, should ask their preference in every single matchup. And for 3 candidates, that's actually very manageable. So they're kind of, it's not a ranked ballot technically anymore.
Right.
It's 3 choose one elections between 2 candidates, which is like the ultimate, like mathematically speaking, unrestricted domain.
Right.
It does not have to be transitive. So you can say I like A more than B, I like B more than C, and I like C more than A. Which I think is awesome, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was RBJ. I don't know if it was RBJ who described it like this, but Condorcet is essentially like multiple rounds of forced runoffs hidden behind one voting method, right? And fundamentally, that's why it's so formidable, because it escapes a lot of the the theoretical concerns of like Arrow's theorem or Gibbert's theorem, because of it's able to. What was the primary thing that's like stated in Arrow's theorem? If there's more than 2 candidates, then you can't do this or that. I forget how exactly it's framed. Or it's worded.
The independence of irrelevant alternatives is the killer property, basically.
Sure, yeah, and I say that even though Arrow applies specifically to ordinal systems, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So Arrow's theorem applies specifically to ordinal systems. Gibbert's theorem applies to both cardinal and ordinal.
Yeah. It's just it's interesting to think about, because yeah, Taylor, you're kind of right. It is sort of distilling and taking off the, I don't know what you would say, taking off the mask of what's really going on underneath. The consequence of that, though, is you get the circular situation going on.
I'm pretty sure Arrow still applies to this, though.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Arrows applies to all systems. Like that's Gibbard, or excuse me, Gibbard applies to all systems. Arrow may not. Although Arrow definitely applies to Condorcet.
Yes, yes.
So there are going to be people who like argue do the nerdy loophole thing. It's just like it doesn't apply to utilitarian blah blah blah, right? Like,
are you calling me out, Roblo?
now. So yeah, so they like, even though it does not apply to say score voting, I mean it still applies, it almost certainly applies to star voting.
Well, so score voting, so it definitely applies to star fails independence of irrelevant alternatives, and it depends on how you extend it to score systems. If you say that if you assume people score independently, like this candidate is an objective 3 out of 5 in my preferences, then technically it satisfies the independence of irrelevant alternatives. But in the ordinal sense, it does not. Approval, I believe, is the only cardinal-ish method that really does satisfy IIA in like some sense. Not perfectly, but at the ballot level at least.
Well, and mind you, like one of the things that Condorcet advocates call for is, let's not talk about independence of irrelevant alternatives. Let's talk about local independence of irrelevant alternatives, which is LIIA.
Yeah.
Is and local is some Condorcet methods pass it. Not all of them, but some of them do, is my understanding.
Right.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not as familiar with that one, but I know IIA is basically, it's almost a degenerate property. Like almost nothing really satisfies it, and that's kind of the magic trick of Arrow's theorem. So that's why a lot of people are like, well, Arrow doesn't really.
Yeah, but you know, Gibbard, you know, so Arrow won the Nobel Prize in 72. Gibbard came out with the theorem in 73 that built on Arrow that then, you know, makes the magic trick go further and definitely applies to Cardinal and everything else. So yeah,
it is an awesome paper. I was reading it I think last week. It's an awesome paper.
Yeah,
so
I've never read it. Like, yeah, I'm too lazy for that.
Yeah, I mean, and isn't that kind of all at the heart of the tension of the voting reform community? Just kind of like we're picking apart these and talking over each other about these different, you know, concerns that we're all kind of doing sort of a categorical error of critique, because all these systems, because we're all trying to build towards the multi-candidate race, multi-candidate competition system. We're trying to optimize for that perfect system, but you know, you can't necessarily go for that. It's not about finding perfection there, and it's hard. It's hard because there are many hardliners like RBJ, who will, you know, they'll speak very, very passionately about how it doesn't work in STAR doesn't work in practicality, or approval messes up this or this or that, or it creates unequal circumstances. You know, it's hard because we end up in this vicious cycle, and when we don't end up pushing forward because we do this weird circular firing squad thing, and then the house keeps burning down, as I think Taylor has said before. The house keeps burning down.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we should probably wrap this up. So thank you guys for being here. That's it for this week's Electorama news. The plan is still to publish it on Wednesdays. Well, not sure. Depends on co-host timing, etc. But so today's Monday edition demonstrates the plan doesn't always go as planned. But I'm hoping to make this into a weekly thing. So the California article that we use today is at electorwiki.org/wiki/2026 California gubernatorial election. We also have a monthly newsletter whose notes are published at electorwiki.org/wiki/electorama news/2026-May, which is still the working copy. And then if you have any corrections that you want to flag or any other electoral reform news that we should track, send suggestions to news@electorama.com, or leave a note on the newsletter talk page, or just edit the newsletter directly because it's a wiki. And so I'm Rob Lanphier, and
I'm Taylor Eigen Fisher.
Carlo Miranda.
And thanks for watching Electorama News Weekly.